Played in 1858 and possibly the most famous chess game of all time, the Opera game features non-stop attacks and sacrifices, throwing everything at an opponent in order to obtain a quick and devastating win. Played during a performance at the Paris Opera, not only is the Opera game considered to be chess legend Paul Morphy's best game, it's also an example of how to dominate an opponent with rapid development, crushing combinations, and brute force in order to obtain complete victory. The Opera game is considered one of the greatest chess battles of all time. Playing white is Paul Morphy from the United States, considered one of the most legendary chess masters ever. Known as the pride and sorrow of chess, Morphy plays this game while also trying to watch the opera being performed on stage. His opponents, playing black, are German noble Karl II, Duke of Brunswick. Also consulting with French aristocrat Comte Isoard de Vauvenargues. They were considered strong amateur chess players, and by ganging up on Morphy, they thought they might have a chance. The three faced off and prepared for battle. Morphy opens kingside with e4, immediately taking control of the center and freeing up his queen and bishop. The Duke and Count reply with e5 for the same reasons, allowing for rapid development of the kingside and easy castling. White continues with knight to f3, both developing a knight and attacking black's pawn at the same time. Black defends it with pawn to d6, the Philidor defense. Considered a solid but passive choice for black, the Philidor defense blocks the bishop on f8 from developing quickly and requires a high level of accuracy to achieve a good opening position. Are amateur chess players capable of pulling off such a move against Paul Morphy, or will they get punished for this later? White moves pawn to d4, freeing up his bishop and attacking the pawn on e5. Because it's protected by the queen, black can't capture it without winding up in a bad position. Instead, black plays an ultra-aggressive move with bishop to g4, pinning the knight to the queen, but the position is more complicated than they think. Morphy captures the pawn on e5, knowing what would happen if black captures back. That's when the Duke and Count realize their mistake. If black captures back with the pawn, it would open up the d-file, exposing their queen. White can then sacrifice his own queen with check, freeing up the knight, and black would have no choice but to capture back with the king, giving up the right to castle. White can then capture the pawn, and would not only be up material, but also have a superior position. So instead, black captures the knight with their bishop, annihilating e5's only defense in an attempt to gain something from the exchange. White decides to capture back with the queen, getting some quick development and eyeing black's weakest square on f7. Black is now free to capture the pawn on e5, eliminating a threat and advancing their pawn to the center. Then, Morphy develops his bishop to c4, threatening checkmate. Black defends by jumping their knight to f6, blocking the checkmate and also getting some development. And now Morphy finds an excellent move. He slides his queen over to b3, not only forming a battery with his bishop to threaten f7, but also menacing the b7 pawn and ultimately the rook. So black defends with another good move, queen to e7, protecting against two of white's attacks. The idea is that if white captures on f7 with the bishop, black can simply defend with the queen. But if white takes the pawn on b7 instead, black can then fork white's king and queen with check. White would then have no choice but to exchange queens. And when the dust finally settles, white would be up a pawn, but no longer have a dominant positional advantage. Now, it's worth mentioning that white also had the option of sacrificing his bishop with f7 check. Black would have to defend with the queen, which would then clear the way for white to capture on b7, trapping the rook. Whether Morphy saw this or not, he decides to continue adding pieces to the attack by jumping his knight to c3, furthering his development. Black replies with pawn to c6, cleverly clearing the path for the queen to defend the pawn on b7, and also restricting white's knight. Then, white pins black's knight to the queen by lunging his bishop to g5. That's when black plays a bad move. They push their pawn to b5, threatening White's bishop, but Morphy takes advantage of this mistake. He's so far ahead in development, he launches right into a crushing combination. White sacrifices his knight by capturing the pawn on b5. Black defends by capturing back, but their king is now completely exposed. So White takes the pawn with his bishop. Check. Black blocks with his knight, but that also pins it to the king so it can't move. Now both of Black's knights are pinned. White castles long, protecting his king by tucking it safely out of the way, and also seizing control of the d-file with his rook. This also connects the rooks, so they can coordinate and work together. Black moves their rook to d8 to defend the knight, but Black is completely tied up. White is ready to unleash a barrage of pain and win material. White captures the knight with his rook. Black captures back, but now the rook is pinned in the knight's place. Then, Morphy activates his last piece by deploying his other rook to d1. He's threatening to capture on d7, and Black doesn't want to have to defend with the queen, so they move it to e6, unpinning the knight, and also offering an exchange. After all, Black is still up on material and could have a chance to turn the game around. That is, if they can survive this assault. White captures the rook on d7 with check, forcing Black to capture back with the knight. Then, White sacrifices his queen with b8, check. Black is forced to capture with the knight, but that clears the d-file for White's rook, who infiltrates d8, and it's all over. This checkmate is so famous, it's actually known as the Morphy mate because of this game. Morphy emerges victorious. Later in life, Paul Morphy lapsed into a state of paranoia and delusion. In 1882, his family tried to admit him to a sanitarium, but he was so brilliant he argued his way out. Though he may have eventually gone insane, his genius was never more on display than in the opera game.